Hello and welcome to the Evercade Retreat. Gene Joke here, and today I'm adding the 194X games from the Evercade EXP and the Capcom Super Pocket to my ever-growing list where I try and rank every Evercade game ever. So yeah, I guess I'm doing hardware-locked games now, and that may present some problems further down the line, but I will cross that bridge when it comes to it. The 194X games are all World War II based shoot-em-ups developed by Capcom. They're all vertically scrolling, and we have 3 of the series on the Evercade hardware so far. The first of which is 1942, which was released in arcades in 1984. Interestingly, for a game made by a Japanese developer, the hero is an American fighter pilot and the bad guys are the Japanese. This was done because Capcom were eyeing the Western market and wanted to make games that would appeal to Americans. Naturally, being a vertically scrolling shoot-em-up from 1984, it shows its age somewhat, but it did lay the foundations for the series. Now, I first played it on the ZX Spectrum, and to be perfectly honest, I was quite a fan of the game. I wasn't particularly good at it, but yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. If I recall correctly, I think it was quite a decent port, for the hardware anyway, and I also vaguely recall playing it in the arcade once or twice. Generally, it's a fairly standard vertically scrolling shoot 'em up. What sets it apart from many is the loop-de-loop manoeuvre, which allows you to dodge enemy fire, but other than that your weapon upgrades are fairly standard, although some power-ups do allow you to get some wingmen, which increases your size and firing range. Well, not firing range, firing spread. The action gets very fast and frantic as enemy fighters come at you very quickly, and although they don't fire a huge amount of bullets, this isn't a bullet hell by any stretch of the imagination, it will definitely keep you on your toes. There are 30 stages to blast your way through, on your way to Tokyo, where you finally take out the entire Japanese Air Force. On the visual front, I think it's quite good looking for an arcade game from 1984. The backgrounds aren't massively detailed, but they do the job. The planes certainly look the part. Although the sprites are fairly small, this really helps with the gameplay. Really, given the age of the game, I can't knock the visuals in the slightest. I can't really knock the gameplay either. Again, it is a fairly simple shoot 'em up, being a product of its time, but it's fast, frantic fun. It is a good game and fairly challenging, given it's quite a long game. The levels are short, but there are a lot of them. What I can knock is the audio. The weapon firing and explosions are perfectly adequate, but the whistling noise that accompanies many of your shots is just agonising. It's like being at a football match and having a overexcited fan blowing his whistle every 3 seconds in support of their team, thinking that it does something other than annoy the people next to them. So ultimately, it's a decent game with horrible sound, and if you play it, I recommend turning the sound off. Placing it in my overall ranking list, I would have to put it above Night Stalker, but below Millipede for the 2600. The next game is 1943, The Battle of Midway, which naturally is the sequel to 1942. Once again, it's an arcade game, and it hit the arcades in 1987, a full 3 years after the first game, which means there's some noticeable improvements. The graphics are improved, not dramatically, but they do have a bit more detail and more variety. The sound effects are more meaty and more satisfying, but most importantly, that horrible whistling noise is gone and there's actually some music, which fortunately is very good. The gameplay is largely the same, although it is built upon. You have some very similar power-ups, but just a little bit more to it. As well as your loop-to-loop, you also have some screen clearing type effects and bosses. You also have a health bar or a fuel tank rather than one-hit deaths, but those screen clear type of attacks I mentioned, well, they take from your health bar. All in all, it's a big improvement on the previous game, and I find after playing this game, I find it very hard to go back to 1942. To place it in my overall ranking list, I would have to put it above In the Hunt, but below Flying Shark. And finally, we have 1944, The Loop Master, which was released in arcades in the year 2000. Now, while I had played the others before, whether it being ports or in the arcade, 1944 was new to me on getting the Evercade. Now, as I understand it, there are other sequels in this series set between, or that came out between the releases of 1943 and 1944. But I've never played them and I know nothing about them. I can't tell you how the series progressed in that time, but 1944 is a bit different, even though it's clearly building upon some of the groundwork that 1943 and 1942 laid. Naturally, coming out some 13 or so years after 1943, it's had a bit of a graphical and sonic overhaul. There's also some tweaks to the gameplay, but the most noticeable change, I think, aside from the quality of the visuals, is the aspect ratio. 1942 and 1943 are Tate aspect, or vertical aspect ratio, or played in portrait mode if you like, whereas 1944 is essentially played in landscape mode or a more standard aspect ratio, which for me is a bit of a bonus, as playing on the EXP it means I don't have to use it in Tate mode, which is a bit more comfortable on my hands as I don't have the Tate grip. As I mentioned, visually it is the best of the bunch. There's also a lot more going on screen, more enemies, more bullets. I'd actually say this kind of goes almost into bullet hell territory. And as I understand it, this wasn't developed internally at Capcom, but was developed by Rising, a company who I'm not really familiar with, but I hear they're made up of people who'd formerly worked at Compile and Towerplan, which makes sense as there's definitely some Towerplan style shoot 'em up stylings present in this game. You still have the loop-de-loop, you still have quite a few power-ups, and you can get your wingmen, but you also have a charge attack mode, so if you hold down your fire button, let it charge, you'll essentially you'll increase your altitude and shoot your enemies from above, making you temporarily unkillable or unhittable, dealing a lot of damage on them, but it takes a while to recharge, and it takes a while to charge up for that matter. You need to use it quite strategically, and I feel that's easier said than done, but it's a visually impressive and fun shoot 'em up. The music is really well done, but I've got to admit the sort of hard rock style music isn't as appealing or as suitable to the gameplay as the music from, say, 1943. That said, it more than does the job, and the game itself is rock solid, and I'd say it's my favourite of the three here. To place it in my overall ranking list, I would put it above Tapeworm Disco Puzzle, but below Fireshark. Well, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.